What we're going to do now is look at several different types of charts and talk about what are they most commonly used for, that particular type of chart, and what are some of the things to look out for when making that type of chart. I'll be using the official names for the charts, which might seem a little bit pedantic, but is important in terms of communicating with other people to make sure that you get the thing that you asked for. And the names that I'll be using are those that correspond to the ones used in common software like Excel and PowerPoint and Keynote. So for example, here we're starting with group column charts. They're columns because they're going up, not sideways. Sideways is bars. And they're grouped because we've got different groups. So in this case, males and females. But this would still also weirdly be called a group chart if there were only one color along here. That's just the distinction for the type of chart. So grouped column charts are very useful for showing things like differences over time, like I've done here. They're also useful for showing differences between groups, in this case males and females, but it could be different age groups, different ethnicities, people from different countries, any of those kinds of things where we want to find out are there differences between groups. And they're also useful in situations where we have short labels, but lots of groups and or lots of data points in the series. So that again gets back to time because these time labels are quite short. And you can imagine how different this would be if this was something like occupational categories or something that had really long names, that it just wouldn't fit as well as something short like a date does. Some things to keep in mind in terms of using group column charts. First and foremost, and we'll come back to this many times, is it's really important to use a zero axis unless there's a really, really, really good reason not to do that. Look at the difference between this chart and the previous one. These are showing the exact same data, but this version, it looks like a much more extreme trend. Here we can see the trend going up gradually, but here that increase looks much more extreme. And that's all being distorted by the fact that we've really shrunk the axis. So we've started it at 1.725 million and only go up to 2.3 million. And that's what's making that increase look really big. Whereas back here, we started that axis at 0, and the increase then is proportionate to the total amount. So normally our practice should be to make the axis start at 0, as I said, unless there's a really good reason not to do it. And in that case, we need to be really clear about what we've done, but if possible, avoid that. As I mentioned, with this type of chart, long labels can be a problem. If this was occupational category or something like that, and those were long names, it would be hard to fit this in. Very large numbers of groups can also be a problem. So just 2 here is fine. If we had even 3 or 4, that would probably be okay. But if we're getting into a situation where we might have like 10 groups or 12 groups or something, that could be a problem. Another theme that we'll be coming back to again and again is the idea that the legend should match the chart. So this is a subtle difference between this one and the previous chart, but if you look at this chart, this is kind of the bad version, and I've shown the legend stacked vertically, whereas here in the previous one, I've got the legend shown horizontally. And horizontally is better for this chart because it matches the way the data is. So we go male, female across the horizontal axis, and that's the way the legend is too. Here, we can still see that males are blue and females are red, but it takes our mind just a split second longer to take that in because they're not arrayed in the same way that they are in the chart itself. And again, that's a theme that we'll come back to.